welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. Glad you could join us. We got a big hockey game this weekend in Vegas. Game 6 between the San Jose Sharks and the Vegas Golden Knights. And this is the pressure back on the Golden Knights, of course, because if they don't win Game 6, then they got to go back to San Jose for Game 7. The guy we have with us on the line right now, yeah, of course you know him, last 20, 25 years for being one of the big faces of poker, one of the best players in the world. I think he's won close to $40 million in prize money just in tournament poker alone. But as good of a poker player and as knowledgeable as Daniel Negreanu is, I think he's just as knowledgeable when it comes to the NHL and, of course, the Vegas Golden Knights, and we're lucky to have him on the line right now. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us, man. How you doing?
Always a pleasure to talk some hockey. My favorite subject by far, no question about it.
Absolutely. Well, before we get to Game 6, Daniel, I want to talk a little bit about Game 5. So I'm looking at all these videos on social media. I don't know if you saw them. Some of these idiot San Jose Sharks fans screaming at Golden Knights fans and verbally abusing them for just being there wearing Golden Knights jerseys. Now, I'm sure you've watched plenty of hockey games on the road. What do you make of this? Because it doesn't just happen in the NHL, right? It happens particularly in the NFL. It happens everywhere, right? What do you make of this?
Well, first I must confess that 2 seats to my right is Matt Savage, who's the tournament director, and he is from San Jose and a Sharks fan. So I verbally abuse him, probably worse than what you saw in those videos every game. So yeah, I understand that it happens. I think for me, if there's kids around and that kind of stuff, and you're using vulgarities and kind of pushing the envelope, that's pushing it too far. You know, having some fun and, you know, needling each other and whatnot, that's all in good fun. That's kind of part of the process. But being mean-spirited and all that, I mean, at the end of the day, guys, it's just a game.
I agree. I couldn't agree with you more, Daniel. Before we get to Game 6, I want to talk a little bit about Ryan Reeves dropping the gloves with Evander Kane. First of all, what did you make of that? It just seems like Reeves is in those guys' heads. I mean, they're talking about Ryan Reeves, who plays, 5 or 6 minutes a game. They're talking about him more than Fleury, being able to score goals on him. What do you make of that whole situation? And do you think Evander Kane, the guy, just has no discipline?
Well, actually, Reeves has been good. He's been playing 11 minutes. 10 minutes a game or in that neighborhood, and he's doing his job, and it's really working. He's got Thornton and Pavelski and Kane preoccupied with him, which means they're not focused on the game. Now, we saw a different version of Ryan Reeves in the last game. I imagine Game 6 at home, things might get a little more heated. The last game wasn't so heated from a physical perspective, but listen, Ryan Reeves is a heavyweight, and he's doing, I watched him, he's going by the bench, sticking his tongue out at him, all that kind of stuff, childhood stuff, but he's doing it to rile them up, and it's working. Like, they're falling right into the trap, right? And, the thing I think about Ryan Reeves, which is so great, is, like, you can call him a lot of things, but one thing you don't is he's not a dirty player. He's just simply not a dirty player. Yeah. He's a big boy. He's not taking any penalties. He's playing clean, but if you step to the line, as he says, as Evander Kane did, he might put you to sleep for a little while.
I'm not sure you could say the same about Joe Thornton or Evander Kane. I would say they are far more dirtier players and I agree with you. I don't think Ryan Reeves is a dirty player at all. But before we break down Game 6, what are your thoughts on fighting in general? Because you just talked about, kids being around when, fans are verbally assaulting other fans. And I know there's not as much fighting in the NHL as there was in years past, right? But what do you make of two guys being able to drop the gloves where if it was you or me, we would go to jail for assault?
I'm a believer that across the board, two consenting adults, whether it's MMA, whether it's boxing, whether it's hockey, whether it's two dudes on the street, should have every right, if they're both consenting, to fight each other, right? And I think we're playing nanny state if we choose otherwise. And in the NHL, you do not have to fight if you do not want to fight. If someone throws punches at you and they try to beat you up, they will be, reprimanded for that. They will get suspended, et cetera. No, we don't see fights today where people just get beat up. It's two guys who, they have a beef to settle, and I'm all for it. And here's the thing. One of the key reasons I'm all for it is the NHL players, and granted this was in 2011, were polled, 98% felt that they wanted fighting in the game, and they felt that it made them feel safer. You compare the careers of Sidney Crosby and Wayne Gretzky. One key difference. Crosby, and Gretzky was no big man. These guys like 165, 170 pounds soaking wet. He had Dave Semenko on his line. He didn't have concussions. Sidney Crosby has dealt with abuse in his career that puts whatever Gretzky had to put up with to shame because people knew if you tried to take a shot at our player, there are consequences. Now today, this is still how they do it, and I'm a believer in this. They're the Warriors. They're in the arena. If they want hockey gone, hockey's gone. If they think hockey's important, if they think hockey, is fighting. I keep saying hockey is the same thing. If they think fighting is important, then absolutely let them police it the way they think is best for their own safety.
Yeah, you're making a lot of sense there. I just have to ask you this. Have you ever been in a physical altercation at the poker table or around the poker table?
I have, but they're usually not ones that I've started. I've usually been the guy that's the mediator. One time it was on a cruise. I was trying to impress a girl, and two guys fought. So I was like, watch me. I'm like skinny little punk, and I jumped off the railing, and I stepped in between these two mammoths. They were like 6'4", right, showing how brave I was. I was intoxicated, okay? I was intoxicated because there's no way in hell I would have done that.
Because you've played, and I'm not going to ask you too many poker questions here, but I would imagine you've been in a ton of games, cash games in your life. You've taken probably 7 figures in your career over some big poker sharks. Has there ever been a situation where you just won an enormous amount of money and somebody was beyond a sore loser and physically threatened you? Have you ever been in a situation like that?
Never. It's
Really?
never based off of winning or losing. I've been physically threatened before, but that's mostly because I have a big mouth and I run my mouth sometimes at the table. But, not because, a player's been losing. I mean, that's one of the great things about a poker table is, listen, it doesn't matter how big or small you are. It's a battle of wits. You got to win with grace and lose with dignity. And, that doesn't always happen, but fisticuffs is not part of the game usually.
That's true. You got to tell Phil Helmut that one because I'm not sure he always loses with dignity. But getting back to getting back to the NHL, the Vegas Golden Knights, San Jose Sharks, Game 6. Danny Negreanu joining us on the line. Okay, Daniel. So a lot of people, and I don't know if you were one of these people, but a lot of people thought the San Jose Sharks kind of they lost their will in Game 4, right, in Vegas. And a lot of people thought they were just going to lay down and die in Game 5. Now, I wasn't one of those people. It seemed like they had that fight back. And Jones has some confidence now, right? A lot of people didn't even think Jones was going to be starting in net for the San Jose Sharks. So do you think the Knights certainly have something to worry about now in Game 6? And do you feel like this is a must-win game for them? And, go ahead.
Yeah, well, you hit the key point, which is Martin Jones, and that was the difference. Because Martin Jones, in the first 4 games, he'd been pulled. He was terrible. He just wasn't very good. And in Game 5, he showed up, and he made some really big saves and kept them in it. And San Jose, to their credit, played a good game. Thought Vegas played well as well. And, you're not just going to win every game when the team's desperate and they have their back against the wall. Now, San Jose coming into our barn and winning on our home ice, when we need the win here, is going to be a tall task for them. And then if they are able to climb that mountain, then they still have to close out Game 7. And this is a resilient club, the Vegas Golden Knights are. So as much as obviously I don't think it's a must-win. Like, obviously, if they lose this one and it goes to a Game 7, they're going to be the underdogs, without having home ice. But I bet at the beginning of the playoffs that Vegas would win in 6. I got 5.081 to 1 odds. I got 5 to 1. So it makes sense to me that I pretty much figured it would go exactly like this. We'd split on the road in the first 2, win our home games. Maybe San Jose wins in Game 5. We close it out in Game 6. So I'm still confident in that prediction.
What at this same time last year, which Vegas Knights team win? Do you think they were better at this point last year than they are right now? How would you rate that?
No chance. This team is significantly better than the one we had last year. And the key difference is that second line. So you look at what we have now on that second line. The year before, that second line ranked dead last in the league in goals against per 60. Because as much as they produced, they allowed a lot to get through their net. Now we have Mark Stone, we have Pacioretty, we have Stasny. These players are two-way players. The one thing that's unique about this Golden Knights team is from top to bottom, from line 1 to line 4, every single player in that top 16 is defensively responsible. We don't have any liabilities. There's really no weak link in that area, and that's kind of the style we play, and we're just much deeper. When you can talk about having, Tuck and Eakin on the third line playing, decent minutes, and we have a line 1 and a line 1A. So, no, this team is definitely better than it was a year ago.
See, but I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think if they don't pick up Stone, I would say absolutely not. I think that picking up Stone was huge for the Knights for so many different reasons. I just feel like they're a different team when he's on the ice.
Yeah, we have so many moving parts, though, and one of the moving parts that's not available to us is Eric Haula all year. So, obviously, if you take no Stone and no Haula, that's a big dent. Having said that, we do have enough guys that plug in. We got Ryan Carpenter, we got Zykov, and we got the new superstar gem from Russia, Nikita Gusev, who can score. I mean, this guy, he was leading the league in the KHL. He's only 26 years old. He's scoring like 1.8 points a game, and that's in a league that doesn't have as much scoring as the NHL even. So this guy, I don't know if he's going to get any chances to play, but one of the things we're built for is the playoffs in the sense that we could lose any one player, maybe not Mark Stone, okay? We could lose any one player, and there is somebody that can replace that player.
That's a good point.
And of course, you lose something, but you don't lose as much as maybe some other teams that are not as deep.
No, that's a good point. They are very deep. Okay, so let me ask you a hockey gambling question then. You said you took the Vegas Golden Knights at 5-1. You're obviously a world-class gambler and poker player. So you take them at 5-1. Are you going to be hedging on Sunday at all? Or are you going to sit with it?
Well, if you're a sports bettor and you're hedging, you're really not very good at it. Here, bottom line is this: like, you don't make a bet that's a negative easy bet just because you made a previous bet. So if the line looks like it's in San Jose's favor, in terms of what they come out with, then I'm happy to bet on San Jose. I'm never happy to bet on them.
I know what you mean.
On them, but I'm not hedging. No, I mean there would be an easy opportunity to do that, but I'm confident. I mean, I think Vegas is going to win at home, and I'm not going to. Yeah, there's no reason to hedge.
Is there any reason for you to believe that this team cannot get back to the Stanley Cup Finals?
Not really, no, because we actually have an easier ride now. Listen, like Calgary's struggling. They're looking like they're going to lose to Colorado, which could give us home ice in the second round. Winnipeg and St. Louis are beating each other up. Nashville, Dallas, they're killing each other. So I do think we have a pretty good road to the finals. And now, most importantly, there's no Tampa Bay, there's no Pittsburgh to worry about. They're gone.
How does that happen, Daniel? How does that happen? I have to interject it. How does Tampa Bay not win a playoff game with the regular season that they had?
Well, I actually bet Columbus in Game 1 plus
Did you really?
So
wow.
I did not expect them to lose a series. Well, I think there was a couple key reasons. Now, if a guy like Victor Hedman can't play Game 3, that tells you that he was not okay in Game 1, was not okay in Game 2, and he was not himself in Game 4. And I think that showed through. This is a Norris Trophy candidate type defenseman, maybe arguably the best. If you ask the players, they'll say he's the best. He was not up to snuff. Columbus now, they'd won 7 of the last 8. They went all in. The GM just said, you know what? Screw it. We can't get rid of our free agents. Let's just bring a whole bunch on board. They started to click. They were already playing playoff hockey the last couple of weeks. Tampa Bay, spent all that time winning all those regular season games, and what do they mean? Nothing.
Right.
I think it's a lesson. Really is a lesson for teams in the future. Like, is it really worth exerting extra effort in the regular season to win the number 1 seed, or are you better off resting up your guys like we did with Fleury, took a couple weeks off, and everybody else got games in and out to really, be prepared for the long stretch. And it's just Tampa Bay was not ready for what Columbus was offering.
You know so much about the NHL, Daniel, so I got to ask you this. I'm a basketball guy, right? It seems like in the NBA, it's so predictable, right? I mean, usually, not all the time, but usually the team preseason that is the favorite, like the Golden State Warriors, are usually the team that wins. Usually, not all the time. But it seems to me that in the NHL, it is very rare. You see this in Major League Baseball, too, that a team that is favored to win the Stanley Cup in the NHL usually does not win. Why is that?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right. You look in the NBA and you can build a super team, right? You got 5 guys on the floor at Golden State that are all stars. Now, Tampa Bay is essentially hockey's version of a super team, and they got swept in the first round. So it's a dynamic, it's a drastic difference in terms of like the parity in the NBA and the NHL, and just the nature of hockey. There's a lot of variance. Like, a lot of people will watch a game and think like the score is 2-1 for one team, but not realizing that actually they've been very lucky to be ahead 2-1, and the other team's outplaying them. Sometimes being, the better team and outplaying an opponent doesn't always necessarily mean you win. Like you take these shots from the point. Sometimes they get tipped. Sometimes they get tipped and they go in. Sometimes they tipped and they go into the goalie's glove. Like a lot of variance and a lot of luck. In the long run, of course, the teams that perform best, and create the most chances are gonna win, but not always. So whenever that's the case, and you run into a hot goalie who just seems to be standing on his head, any team that makes the playoffs, because these are all good teams. There's 31 teams in the league right now. And to be in the top 16, you got to be a pretty darn good team. And all 16 of these guys, they went through their adversity through the season. Yeah. So any team can beat any team. I think that's what makes it beautiful. The playoffs are fantastic.
Now, this Vegas Golden Knights team inside and out. So let me ask you this then. I in my personal opinion, I don't think the value is good enough to take the Vegas Golden Knights to win the Stanley Cup Finals. Did you make any futures bets on the Vegas Golden Knights, and can you tell us about it, if you did?
No, and you're right, because there's one key thing. Las Vegas, since, there's betting here and you can bet on Vegas, the numbers are usually skewed really poorly in betting on Vegas. I think the books learned their lesson last year when they were risking ruin, when they were offering 500 and 200 to 1 on them winning the Cup before the season started. They've been a lot more careful in that regard, and I do think that they get a lot more action on Vegas, which tends to, if the public is betting on Vegas, it's going to drive the number in the wrong direction.
Right.
I don't have any futures on Vegas, but in the future I'm hoping to be. there for the Stanley Cup Final.
When you're watching a game, do you make in-game wagering on hockey? Because as you know, you can bet in the middle of the game, after the first period, after the second period. You can bet usually when there's 5 minutes left to go in a game. Are you the kind of guy that makes bets when you're there watching the game, or do you stay away from those sort of things?
The problem with that for me is, the amount that I bet per game typically is much more significant than what you'll be able to get down on like in-game betting. Like they might let you bet $500 or something like that, or $1,000, but they're not going to like put out a line after the first period and let you bet $20,000 on it. So I don't really bother with that stuff too much, although it's very fun and an interesting way to gamble for sure, being able to watch the trends and see what's happening.
What do you make of the guy that walks up to the SLS counter and bets $85,000 on Tiger Woods to win the Masters?
Well, what's funny is I read his interview and he said something to the effect of like, I'm very financially stable and secure, and I'm like very smart with my money. I'm like, you're $25,000 in debt, you owe a mortgage, and you just scrounged up $85K to bet on a guy who hasn't won a major in 11 years. Sounds like a guy I want to, put my money. I don't want him watching my money.
That's true. That's a good point. Okay, last question for you, Danny, and we always appreciate your time so much, my man. Poker question. We got the World Series of Poker right around the corner. I've always wanted to ask you this. What do you do to prepare for that? Because you're playing in so many tournaments, right? And I know you're used to playing long sessions, and you've done that your whole life. But what do you do mentally to prepare yourself for the World Series of Poker every year, which is right around the corner?
Well, typically what I do is I relax. I might golf. I'm working on, being in the gym. And, this year I'm getting married on May 17th.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. But overall, really, I don't play much. I actually stay away from the table because I know for 6 weeks I'm going to be there 12 to 14 hours a day. So I just cherish the time before that, sit by the pool, golf,
sure.
Meditate, do some yoga, all those things that you'd expect to that coincide with the idea of relaxation.
Makes sense. Well, Danny, I'll tell you something, man. If the Vegas Golden Knights can take care of the San Jose Sharks in this series, we'd love to have you on again to preview the next series, if that's okay with you.
It's a date.
All right. Daniel, always appreciate your time, my man. We'll see you on Sunday, and let's go Knights go, baby. Thank you so much for your time.
You got it, bud. Anytime.
All right. There you go. Danny Negreanu. I'm always amazed by how smart this guy is. Right? He's not only a world-class poker player, beyond world-class, right? The guy's got a gazillion bracelets, and he's won, $40 million in tournaments. You tell me that Daniel Negreanu could not be the color commentator for the Vegas Golden Knights, TV or radio or both. I don't think you could do both. I don't think that's possible. But that guy knows hockey inside and out. He bets on hockey all the time. He wins. I see he puts his plays up on Twitter. That guy knows hockey better than anybody I've ever spoken to in my life. And look, I've interviewed guys like Wayne Gretzky, Barry Melrose. I'm going to tell you right now, as far as knowledge of the game, Daniel's right up there. I'm not sure there's something about the NHL that Daniel doesn't know. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So I would listen to Daniel. He likes the Vegas Golden Knights in Game 6, as do I. I do think the Vegas Golden Knights are going to get it done. And the way Daniel was talking... All right, the only thing he said that I disagree with, and I could be wrong on this, the guy's 10 times more knowledgeable than I am when it comes to the NHL. I don't think the Vegas Golden Knights are a better team right now than they were at this time last year. And the reason why I say that, and I'm not saying they don't have chemistry, and Mark Stone was a humongous pickup for the Knights. I think guys like Perron and James Neal were also huge. Now, I think the Vegas Golden Knights are really good. I'm not going to count them out. I certainly think they could get to the Stanley Cup Finals, and I hope I'm wrong on this, but it's my sense that they do not get there. That's just my opinion. And again, I hope I'm wrong. They're a fun team to cover. I'll be covering the game with my co-host, J.D. Sharp. Wasn't my co-host today, by the way. I don't know. He's playing hooky again today. I think he's shown up 2 of the last 30 shows. So that's good. That's a good co-host to have. That's awesome. That's great. But I hear Ken Thompson in the background laughing. Yeah. Ken's having a good time. But I hope I'm wrong on that one. What do we know? We know this is a very good team. We know this is unprecedented, year 1 and now year 2. We know that this is a team, and Daniel's so right. He explained it so well. There's a lot of lucky bounces in hockey, a lot of variance. He's right. In the NBA, you don't have that kind of variance that you have in the NHL, right? A couple lucky bounces here and there. Wow, all of a sudden your team could be down 2-0 or 3-0 in the first period. It happens all the time. Look at what happened with the Tampa Bay Lightning. If they played Columbus 100 games, I would be willing to bet that they would win at least 80 out of 100. I don't think that's a stretch. But they found a way to lose 4-0 in the series. The variance of the NHL, it's a difficult sport to bet on, but if you have the knowledge that a Danny Negreanu has, if you know your team inside and out, and certainly he does with the Vegas Golden Knights, it's worthwhile to bet on, but he also made a very good point. The lines in Vegas are skewed, and the reason why is because these books know how much action they're going to get in Vegas on the nights. So you're not usually getting a lot of value on the Vegas Golden Knights, and you're probably not going to get a lot of value in Game 6 either. I'm very curious to know if the Knights lose Game 6, which I don't think they will, but hypothetically, if they lose, I bet you Game 7 is a pick'em. I would put the Vegas Golden Knights and the San Jose Sharks as a pick'em. Maybe the San Jose Sharks like minus 120, minus 125, but I think Game 7 would be a pick'em, a coin flip, so to speak. But of course the Knights are going to be favored on Sunday. They have home ice. They're trying to close it out. It's a closeout game. Make no mistake about it, though. All the pressure's on the Vegas Golden Knights right now. This is a game they have to win. You do not want to, under any circumstance, in any sport, you do not want to go on the road hoping to win a Game 7. You never want to be put in that circumstance. Obviously, that's what the Sharks want, right? You want that sort of circumstance. You want a chance to give yourself a chance to win at home. I expect the San Jose Sharks are going to put a much better performance together that they did in Game 4. Game 4, they were just awful. I believe they're going to be disciplined. I think it's going to be a tight game. But when I look at this game, I do think that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to win. Yeah, it might be a 3-2 game. Could be 4-2 with an open net, something like that. I think this is going to be a tight game. I don't think the Vegas Golden Knights are just going to run away with it. And Ken just told me that the Vegas Golden Knights are minus 160, right? That sounds about right. Minus 165, that sounds about right. Now, what should that line be if it wasn't in Vegas? And what I mean by that is, let's just say the Vegas Golden Knights were, I don't know, the New York Golden Knights, something like that. I think that line would probably be minus 145. But because we're in Vegas and because they're getting heavy action on the Knights, you're not getting good value. You want good value? See, the problem with betting the puck line is if the game's 2-2 or 3-3 and you go into overtime, you're screwed. You just lost. You're counting on that open net goal. So if you ask me what's going to happen, I'm going to say Vegas Golden Knights win this game 3-2. There's my pick. There you go. You might want to follow Danny Negreanu. That guy knows what he is talking about. He is the man. And he likes the Vegas Golden Knights in Game 6. I'd bet the Vegas Golden Knights in Game 6. Without a shadow of a doubt. He is a genius when it comes to the NHL and poker. And he picked the Vegas Golden Knights in 6, and I think he's going to be right. I'm actually a little bit surprised that he's not hedging his bet. He is a true gambler. If I have $1,000 on the Knights to win in 6, $1,000 to win 5,000, I'm going to put probably $1,500 on this game on the Sharks. Maybe $1,000 money line to make sure that I get my money back. Anyway, this has been a fun week of shows, man. We've had a great time. On Monday, of course, we will talk about a little Vegas Golden Knights hockey, see if they can move on, if they did move on. So we'll talk about that. We will continue the political talk. But I got to tell you, folks, the legend, Ken Thompson, is coming up next. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for listening to The Vegas Take. Twitter @The Vegas Take on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN.